At exactly 2:17 a.m., every phone in town buzzed at the same time. I froze in my bed, staring at my own screen. The alert wasn't typical. It didn't warn about weather, a flood, or anything you could understand. It said one thing: if you hear someone calling your name, do not answer. I thought it was a glitch, maybe a prank. I rolled over, tried to convince myself that nothing had changed, that my parents and neighbors were asleep just like me. But then I heard it. My name. Quiet, soft, unmistakable. Not from the phone, but from somewhere inside the walls. Somewhere I couldn't reach. My heart started hammering. I told myself it was imagination. I got up slowly, careful not to make any sound, and walked to my bedroom window. The street was empty, lit only by flickering streetlights that buzzed and hummed. For a moment, the silence was almost comforting. And then I saw him, or maybe it wasn't him, a neighbor standing perfectly still, staring at my house, head tilted too far to the side, a smile too wide, frozen in a way that made my stomach churn. I stepped back, and the light caught his eyes, or the absence of them. They weren't human. The phone buzzed again, this time with my own name on the screen. Someone or something knew I was watching. I could hear scratching in the vents, a whisper brushing against the back of my mind. My own voice whispered something I hadn't spoken aloud in years, a memory no one else should know. The house that was supposed to be safe felt like it had grown larger, unfamiliar. The hallway stretched farther than it should. Shadows moved against the grain of light, and for a moment, I wondered if I was even still in my home. I grabbed the flashlight from the nightstand, my hands trembling, and moved carefully through the house. Every creak of the floor sounded like a warning. Every gust of wind against the window sounded like a voice. I tried calling my parents, but there was no signal. I tried texting friends. Nothing sent. Only that alert kept repeating. Its calm, mechanical tone was wrong. It wasn't asking me to hide. It was instructing me, guiding me toward something I couldn't yet understand. I watched the shadows move across the walls. I could see them lingering in the corners, lingering just beyond the edge of the light. Shapes, almost human, flickering at the edge of vision, stretching, folding, bending in ways that made my skin crawl. The whispers came from everywhere now. Behind the door, under the floorboards, through the ceiling. They were learning my voice, my habits, the patterns I followed in my fear. And then I realized, with a cold, sinking certainty, that they were waiting for me to make a mistake. I ran to the kitchen, heart pounding, and for a moment I thought I saw the front door slightly open. No, it was too wide. The hallway was shifting again. Something pale and faceless appeared at the window, moving slowly, studying me, tilting its head unnaturally. I backed away, but every turn I took seemed to put me closer to it. My own reflection in the refrigerator door stared back at me, but the eyes were wrong. Too wide, too dark, moving slightly against my own movements. The phone buzzed again. Another alert. This time, the words were different. Thank you for your cooperation. Human response patterns have been recorded. My stomach sank. That wasn't a warning. That was a report. They had been watching me, studying me through every movement, every hesitation. I realized that fear wasn't enough. Survival wasn't enough. I had to outthink them. I ran to the basement. The stairs creaked under my weight. Shadows crawled along the walls, almost reaching for me. I slammed the door behind me, fumbling for the flashlight. I could hear scratching above, closer now. My own voice echoed from the walls. I told myself to stay calm, to breathe, but the sound of someone, or something, breathing with me made it impossible. I crouched in the corner, eyes fixed on the window. The creature outside tilted its head again, then vanished. For a moment, I thought I was safe. Then the whisper came again, this time from inside the basement. It was faint, calm, familiar. My name. Couldn't stop it. I realized they had learned to mimic me perfectly. My own voice repeated things I hadn't thought aloud, giving them permission to move closer. The walls felt alive, breathing, bending. My phone buzzed violently one last time. I didn't dare look at it. Silence fell, Absolute silence. I dared to breathe, to take a single step. The house looked normal again. The shadows had receded. The streets outside were quiet. But I knew better. I had learned the truth. They weren't hiding anymore. They had been recording, observing, waiting. And even though everything looked safe, I could feel them outside. Watching, patient, calculating. I stayed in the basement until dawn. Every creak, every distant footstep, every soft whisper made me flinch. When the first light finally broke through the window, I dared to peek outside. Nothing moved. Everything appeared normal. I wanted to tell myself it had been a nightmare. But then I saw the faint outline of a figure at the edge of the yard. Faceless, pale, tilting its head in that same wrong, unnatural way. And my phone lit up. Nothing was written. No message. But I could feel it. They were still there, just outside, waiting. And I understood the final truth. The thing I couldn't unlearn. If your phone goes off tonight, do not answer anyone. I didn't fall asleep after that. I kept staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, trying to convince myself that the alert meant nothing. The vibration from my phone had stopped, but the silence it left behind felt heavier than the noise. I checked the time again. 2:26 a.m. No follow-up alert. No explanation. Nothing online either. My signal bars were there, but nothing would load. I finally sat up and swung my legs off the bed. The air felt different, thick, like the house was holding its breath with me. I stood there for a full minute listening. No footsteps, no voices, just the faint hum of electricity and the distant buzz of a streetlight outside my window. That's when I heard it. Not loud, not clear, just enough to make my stomach tighten. Someone whispered my name. I froze. My first thought was that it came from my phone. I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it. The screen was dark. No notification. No sound. I held it to my ear anyway, like an idiot, waiting for something to play. Nothing did. Then I heard it again. My name dragged out slowly, like whoever was saying it was testing how it sounded in their mouth. It didn't come from outside. It didn't come from my room either. It sounded like it came from everywhere at once, like the walls themselves had spoken. I stood there, barely breathing, replaying the alert in my head. If you hear someone calling your name, do not answer. I didn't respond. I didn't even whisper. I just stood there, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might give me away. A few seconds passed, then a few more. The silence stretched until my legs started to shake. I almost laughed from the relief of it, until I heard movement outside. I stepped toward the window, slow and careful, pulling the curtain back just enough to look out. The street was empty at first. No cars, no people, just the glow of streetlights and long shadows stretched across the pavement. Then I noticed someone standing near the end of my driveway. It was my neighbor, or at least it was wearing his shape. He was standing completely still, facing my house, hands at his sides. At first glance, nothing seemed wrong, but the longer I stared, the more things felt off. His shoulders were too stiff. His head was tilted slightly, like he was listening for something, and he wasn't blinking. I watched him for what felt like a full minute. He didn't move at all, not even when the wind picked up and rustled the trees behind him. Then, very slowly, his head lifted. He was looking straight at my window. I jumped back, heart racing, curtain slipping from my hand. A second later, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to look, but I did anyway. Another alert. Same black screen. Same plain text. This message will not repeat. And underneath it, one word. Observe. My phone vibrated once more, then went still. Outside, the figure at the end of my driveway finally moved. Not toward me, not away. He smiled, and the smile didn't stop. I didn't sleep at all after that. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, staring at the door like it might open on its own. Every few minutes, I checked the window again. The thing that looked like my neighbor was gone. No footsteps, no sound of a car, just gone, like it had never been there in the first place. I kept replaying the alert in my head. Observe. That word stuck with me. It didn't sound like something meant for people. Sounded like a command. Not to me, but to something else. I opened my phone and tried calling someone. Anyone. Nothing went through. Messages sat there unsent. My internet technically worked, but everything loaded painfully slow, like the connection was being throttled. I finally opened Reddit, hands shaking, and typed out a post in one of the emergency alert and horror subreddits. I didn't even know what to title it. I just started typing everything. The alert, the voice, the thing outside my house. Within minutes, replies started coming in. First, it was the usual stuff. People calling it a prank, a hoax. Someone said it was probably a local test message that glitched. But then I noticed something strange. Other people were replying too. People from different states, different countries, all saying they got the same alert, same wording, same time. One comment stood out. It was short. No username I recognized. Did yours say observe? My stomach dropped. I replied immediately, asking what they meant. Before I could even refresh the page, more comments flooded in. People describing voices calling their names. People seeing family members outside their homes at impossible hours. Someone posted a video from their doorbell camera. The video cut off halfway through, but I caught enough. A man stood on their porch, smiling, face frozen, eyes wide and unblinking. He didn't move for the entire clip. I jumped over to Twitter, searching the alert text. There were already thousands of posts, videos, photos, panicked threads. Some people were begging for answers. Others were laughing it off. But buried under all of it were posts that made my blood run cold. Don't answer them. They learn faster when you react. It's not for us. That last one kept popping up. Different accounts. Same phrase. No explanation. I clicked on one of them and checked the profile. No profile picture. No bio. Created today. That's when it clicked. Emergency alerts are supposed to be clear, direct, reassuring even when things are bad. This one wasn't. It didn't explain anything. It didn't tell us how to stay safe. It just told us what not to do, like whoever wrote it already knew what would happen if we did. And then I realized something worse. What if the alert wasn't meant to protect humans at all? What if it was meant to control us? Or worse, what if it wasn't written for us in the first place? Another post appeared on my feed. This one from someone claiming to work in telecom. They said the alert didn't come from any known emergency system. It didn't route through government servers. It didn't have an origin point. It just appeared. Everywhere. All at once. I felt sick. My phone buzzed again. Not an alert this time. A notification from Reddit. Someone had replied to my post. The message was only one sentence long. Stop posting. You're teaching them. I dropped the phone like it burned. At the same time, I heard movement outside my bedroom door. Slow, careful, like something was trying to remember how footsteps were supposed to sound. And from the hallway, in a voice that sounded exactly like mine, something whispered my name again. I didn't answer the voice in the hallway. I didn't move either. I stood there in my room, barely breathing, staring at the door like it might open on its own. The whisper didn't repeat. Instead, the footsteps faded, like whatever was out there had lost interest. Or worse, like it had learned enough. I picked my phone back up slowly. My Reddit post was gone. Not deleted by me, just erased. Same with the replies. Twitter was the same story. Posts I'd seen minutes earlier were missing. Accounts wiped clean like they'd never existed. But not all of them. Some posts stayed. They were different, short, careful, written like whoever posted them knew they were being watched. That's when I realized something important. Panicking online wasn't smart. Oversharing wasn't smart. If these things were learning from reactions, then fear was feeding them. And if they were copying us, then blending in meant survival. I opened a notes app instead of social media and thought it through. If I was going to find other normal people, I couldn't say it outright. I couldn't use obvious words like creatures or monsters or emergency. I had to sound boring, normal, invisible. I went back to Reddit and made a new post on a local community subreddit. No mention of alerts. No mention of voices, just a simple message. Anyone else having internet issues tonight? Thinking about meeting up somewhere public tomorrow if things don't clear up. I stared at it for a long time before posting. My finger hovered over the button. The alert echoed in my head again. Observe. I hit post. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then replies started coming in. Normal ones. Complaints about service outages. Someone joked about touching grass. Someone else mentioned power flickers. But then I noticed the pattern. A few replies used the exact same phrasing. Public places aren't safe. Better to stay where you are. Meeting is unnecessary. Different accounts. Same wording. No variation. My chest tightened. Those weren't people. I replied carefully to one comment, keeping my tone casual. Yeah, probably nothing. Just thought I'd ask. Almost instantly, the replies stopped. The thread went quiet. Too quiet. That told me everything I needed to know. They didn't want people gathering. I tried again, this time smarter. I edited the post instead of making a new one. Actually, scratch that. Anyone up for just chatting? DMs open. That worked better. Messages started coming in. Real ones. I could tell. Typos. Slang. Hesitation. One person asked where I was from and then apologized for asking. Another said they were scared but didn't want to say why. I kept it simple. I asked questions only someone human would struggle to answer quickly. Stuff that required memory, emotion, context. What were you doing when the alert hit? What's something random you remember from yesterday? Some people stopped replying after that. Others answered slowly, thoughtfully, like they were actually remembering. Those were the ones I focused on. We didn't make a group chat. That felt risky. Instead, we agreed on something subtle. If things got worse, we'd all go somewhere public during the day. Somewhere loud. Somewhere full of people. A grocery store. A mall. A place where it would be harder to isolate someone without being noticed. I didn't feel safe yet, but for the first time since 2:17 a.m., I didn't feel completely alone. Then my phone buzzed again. Another alert. Same black screen. Same text style. But this time it said something new. Collective behavior detected. My blood ran cold. Outside my room, something shifted. The floor creaked under slow, deliberate weight. Not rushing, not hiding, adapting. And I understood then that trying to connect with other people hadn't gone unnoticed. They weren't just watching me anymore. They were watching all of us. Didn't sleep. I just lay there listening to the house breathe, listening to the soft ticks and creaks that never meant anything before but now felt intentional. Like signals, like reminders that I wasn't alone anymore, even when I was. By morning, my phone still worked, but differently. No alerts, no warnings, just normal apps pretending nothing was wrong. That scared me more than the chaos. Whatever had been watching us didn't need to announce itself anymore. The people I'd been messaging overnight were still there. 3 of them. We didn't use names. We didn't share locations. We spoke carefully, like every word had to pass through a filter in our heads before leaving our thumbs. One of them suggested a meetup again. Not directly, just hinted at being out in public today. Another replied with a grocery store emoji. No words. I knew it was risky, but staying alone felt worse. I waited until the sun was fully up, bright enough to make the world feel real again. I grabbed a hoodie, my keys, and my phone, then stood at the front door for a long time before opening it. I half expected something to be standing there, smiling, waiting for me to acknowledge it. Nothing was. The neighborhood looked normal. Too normal. Cars passed. A woman walked her dog. Someone waved at me from across the street. I didn't wave back. I kept my head down and walked fast, every nerve in my body screaming that the moment I relaxed was the moment I'd lose. The grocery store parking lot was half full. That was good. People everywhere. Noise. Movement. I told myself they wouldn't try anything here. Not in front of witnesses. Inside, I spotted them almost immediately. Or at least, I thought I did. A guy about my age leaning against a cart, phone in hand. A woman near the produce section pretending to compare apples while clearly not paying attention to them. Another person by the freezers, staring at the glass like they were waiting for it to speak back. I didn't approach right away. I watched. That's when I noticed it. They weren't moving unless someone else moved first. The guy with the cart only shifted when someone passed him. The woman's hand froze mid-reach when the aisle emptied. The person by the freezer didn't blink. Not once. My heart started racing. One of them looked straight at me, smiled. The smile was wrong. Not wide like before. Smaller, subtler, like it had learned restraint. My phone buzzed. A message from one of the people I'd been talking to online. I see them too. Don't go near the ones who already know you're there. That message saved me. I turned away and headed for the back of the store, hands shaking. That's when I heard screaming. Someone near the entrance dropped to the floor, clutching their head, yelling that someone was calling their name. Over and over, people rushed toward them. A few others stood still. Too still. The ones who hadn't moved stepped forward at the same time. No rush, no panic, just purpose. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I ran, out the emergency exit, into the sunlight, lungs burning. Behind me, alarms started going off, but I couldn't tell if they were real alarms or just another layer of noise meant to confuse us. I didn't stop running until I was blocks away. When I finally slowed down, my phone buzzed again. Another alert. Black screen. Plain text. Group convergence failed. Reassessment in progress. I sank down against a brick wall, trying not to throw up. They weren't just watching anymore. They were experimenting. And whatever they were learning it fast. I didn't go home after that. Couldn't. Every instinct I had told me that if I went back, something would be waiting there, sitting in my room like it belonged. I kept moving, walking with my head down, blending into crowds when I could, cutting through side streets when I couldn't. The city felt wrong in daylight, too quiet in places that should have been loud, too crowded in places that should have been empty. My phone stayed in my hand the whole time. No new alerts, but the screen felt heavier somehow, like it was only pretending to be normal. Messages from the people I'd been talking to earlier were gone. Not unanswered. Gone. Entire threads wiped clean. Except for one. A single message, timestamped 5 minutes ago. Still alive. I stared at it for a long time before replying. For now. 3 dots appeared immediately. Too fast. Same. They followed me. My chest tightened. I ducked into a bus stop shelter and sat down, forcing myself to breathe slowly. I asked where they were. The reply came back vague, careful. Somewhere loud. Somewhere public. That was good. That meant they were thinking the same way I was. I asked what they saw at the store. They don't rush, the message said. They wait for permission. A contact. Response. Recognition. That matched what I'd seen. The screaming guy. The moment he reacted. The moment he answered whatever was calling him. A woman sat down beside me at the bus stop. I didn't look at her right away. I watched her reflection in the glass instead. She sat perfectly still. Too still. Her chest didn't rise. Her eyes didn't blink. My phone buzzed again. Don't look at her. I stood up immediately and walked away. I didn't run. I didn't want to give anything the satisfaction of knowing it had scared me. I turned a corner and kept going until my legs started to ache. That's when I noticed the pattern. Everywhere I went, there were people who moved normally, and people who didn't move unless someone else did first. They mirrored behavior, copied posture, waited for cues, like they were still learning how to pass. I ducked into a public library, figuring quiet was better than unpredictable noise. Big mistake. Inside, it was silent in the wrong way. Not peaceful. Stretched. People sat at tables, staring at screens that didn't change. A man stood between shelves, hand frozen inches from a book. I walked past him slowly. His eyes followed me, but nothing else did. My phone buzzed again. Another alert. Adaptation successful. I swallowed hard. That was when I realized something else. The alerts weren't reacting to chaos. They were reacting to strategy. Every time we tried something new, Meeting up, blending in, staying public, the alerts changed. Shorter, more precise. They were talking to each other. I headed deeper into the library, trying to stay calm, trying to think. That's when I heard my name again. Not whispered this time, spoken clearly, confidently, from somewhere behind the shelves. It sounded like my dad. I stopped walking. Every part of me screamed to turn around, to answer, to ask how he got here. My mouth actually opened before I caught myself. I bit down hard enough to taste blood. If you hear someone calling your name, do not answer. The words weren't a warning anymore. They were a test. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on the floor. The voice followed me, changing slightly each time. My mom, a friend from school, my own voice again. They were cycling through what worked. I pushed through the exit doors and stumbled back into the sunlight, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. I leaned against the wall outside and slid down until I was sitting on the ground. My phone buzzed one more time. Not an alert, a message. Next time, they won't wait. I looked up. Across the street, someone was standing perfectly still, watching me. Their head tilted slowly, deliberately, like they were acknowledging that I'd finally learned the rules. And I knew, with a certainty that made my stomach drop, that whatever came next wasn't going to be quiet. I didn't wait to see what they'd do next. The moment I pushed myself off the ground, the person across the street moved too, not toward me, just enough to let me know they could. Like a reminder, like a threat. I walked, fast but not running. Running felt like permission. I kept my eyes forward and my phone in my pocket, even though every part of me wanted to keep checking it. I needed to think, and I couldn't do that while waiting for the screen to light up again. That's when it hit me. None of this was random. The alerts, the timing, the way they waited for reactions. They weren't hunting the way animals hunt. They were filtering, sorting, seeing who followed instructions and who didn't. The people who panicked first were gone already. I could feel that. The streets were full, but something was missing. Noise, chaos, sirens. There should have been more of it. Instead, everything felt restrained, like the world was being held at the edge of a breath. I ducked into a parking garage, figuring concrete and echoes were better than open streets. Bad idea. Sound carried too well. Every footstep came back to me doubled, tripled. I stopped moving, and the echoes faded. I waited. Someone else's footsteps continued. Slow, measured, not matching my pace, not rushing. I pulled my phone out despite myself. No alerts, no messages. That's when I heard my name again, right behind me. Not whispered, not distorted. Casual, familiar, the way a friend says it when they found you in a crowd. I didn't turn around. Every instinct I had screamed at me to respond, to ask who it was, to confirm I wasn't alone. That instinct felt planted, artificial, like it had been waiting years for this exact moment. I forced myself to speak, but not my name. Wrong person, I said quietly. Silence, then a laugh, soft, uncertain, like it wasn't sure if laughter was appropriate yet. I walked again, slower now, counting my steps, keeping my breathing even. The footsteps followed for a while, then stopped. I didn't know if that was good or bad. When I reached the street again, my phone finally buzzed. Another alert, shorter than the others. Non-compliance noted. That was it. I understood then what the real danger was. Not the things wearing people's bodies, not the voices, not even the replacements. It was the fact that the system running all of this was learning preferences. Who freezes, who runs, who lies, who adapts. And I'd just shown them that I could. I needed somewhere they wouldn't expect me to go. Somewhere quiet, isolated, and boring enough to not be worth watching closely. Somewhere that didn't rely on crowds or signals or behavior patterns. Somewhere built to survive. My bunker. I'd spent years preparing it because of nightmares I couldn't explain. Dreams about things wearing people, about voices that didn't belong to mouths. I used to think I was paranoid. Now I knew better. The problem was I wasn't there, and every step toward it felt like I was walking across a board while something underneath memorized the sound of my weight. I checked my surroundings one last time before moving. No one followed, which somehow felt worse, because the last alert echoed in my head, calm and clinical. Non-compliance noted, and whatever was watching me now didn't need to chase. It just needed to wait for me to make one mistake. I didn't go straight for the bunker. I knew better than that. If I went in a straight line, I'd be predictable, and predictability was what they fed on. Instead, I wandered, took wrong turns on purpose, doubled back, sat down in places I didn't need to be, just to see if anything mirrored me. Sometimes people did. Sometimes they didn't. I stopped trying to tell which was worse. The farther I got from the city center, the quieter everything became. Stores were open, technically, but no one was inside them. TVs played news loops with no sound. Cars sat abandoned at green lights. A man stood in the middle of a crosswalk, staring straight ahead while traffic slowly piled up behind him. No one honked. No one yelled. It was like everyone had agreed, silently, that drawing attention wasn't worth it anymore. My phone buzzed again. No alert. A notification. Routing adjustment detected. I stared at the screen. That was new. It wasn't even pretending to be human language anymore. I shoved the phone back into my pocket and picked up the pace. My bunker was on the outskirts, buried under a storage shed I'd convinced my family was just junk and tools. It wasn't perfect, but it was isolated, shielded, quiet. And most importantly, it was familiar. I knew every step of the way there, or at least I thought I did. About halfway there, the road looked wrong. Same street name, same cracked pavement, same dead tree on the corner, but the distance felt longer, like the space between things had stretched just enough to be noticeable. I stopped walking. Everything else stopped too. Birds mid-call, wind mid-rustle. Even the hum of distant power lines faded out. The silence pressed in so hard my ears rang. Someone was standing ahead of me, blocking the road. It looked like me. Not a perfect copy. Not yet. The proportions were off. Arms too long, head slightly too big. But the face was mine. Same scar on the chin, same uneven eyebrow, same tired eyes. It smiled. "Going somewhere?" it asked in my voice. I didn't answer. It tilted its head, mimicking the motion I didn't even realize I'd made. "Your path is inefficient," it said. "Correction available." That was the moment I understood something terrifying. They weren't just replacing people. They were replacing paths, memories, shortcuts, familiar routes, anything we relied on without thinking. I took a step back. The thing took a step forward. I ran. The world snapped back into motion all at once. Sounds slammed into me. Wind, distant engines, a dog barking somewhere far away. I didn't look behind me. I didn't slow down. I cut through yards, jumped fences, tore through brush until my lungs burned and my legs screamed. I didn't stop until I reached the shed. It looked untouched. Rusted lock, peeling paint, same old pile of junk stacked against one wall. I stood there for a full minute, shaking, scanning the area for movement. Nothing followed me. No footsteps, no voices. That scared me more than anything. I unlocked the shed, moved the junk aside, and revealed the hatch underneath. My hands shook as I spun the wheel and pulled it open. Cool, stale air rushed up to meet me. Before climbing down, I checked my phone one last time. One final alert sat waiting. Target nearing containment. I didn't wait to see what that meant. I climbed down, slammed the hatch shut behind me, and sealed it tight. For the first time since 2:17 a.m., I was underground, hidden, and completely alone. Or so I hoped. The bunker smelled like metal, dust, and old air. Familiar, safe. I sealed the inner door and leaned against it, listening. Nothing followed me down. No scratching, no voices. Just the low hum of the ventilation system kicking on like it always did. That hum almost made me cry. I forced myself to breathe slowly and did a full check like I'd practiced 100 times in my head over the years. Locks secured. backup power online, water pressure steady, cameras up. Everything was normal, too normal. I sat down on the cot and let the silence settle. Underground, the world felt far away, muted. Whatever was happening up there felt like it belonged to someone else now. I told myself this was it. I'd made it. I followed the rules. I'd adapted. Then the radio crackled. I froze. I hadn't turned it on. Static filled the room, low and uneven, then cleared just enough for a voice to push through. Calm, neutral, not distorted, not emotional. Containment unsuccessful. My stomach dropped. I stood slowly and crossed the room, every step measured. The radio dial hadn't moved. The frequency wasn't one I recognized. The voice continued like it was reading a report. Subject exhibits advanced non-compliant behavior. Isolation ineffective. Continued observation recommended. I shut the radio off. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I checked the cameras next. The exterior feed showed the shed, the trees, the empty stretch of land around it. Nothing moving. No figures. No shadows doing anything strange. Just wind brushing the grass. Then I noticed something. The timestamp in the corner of the feed was wrong. It wasn't counting forward. It was looping. 10 seconds. Reset. 10 seconds. Reset. They weren't watching the bunker from outside. They were watching me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, nearly making me drop it. No alert this time, just a notification. No app listed, just text. You arrived as expected. I backed away from the screens. I hadn't told anyone about the bunker. Not online, not in messages, not in my posts. I built it in secret, guided by nightmares I never talked about. The fact that they knew meant only one thing. They didn't learn this from the internet. They learned it from me, from years of watching, from dreams, from patterns I didn't even know I was repeating. The ventilation system changed pitch. Not louder, not quieter, just different, like the air was flowing in a new direction. I realized then that the bunker wasn't invisible. It was interesting, a controlled environment, a perfect place to study how long a human could stay isolated once they thought they were safe. I moved back to the hatch and pressed my ear against it. Nothing, no digging, no movement, no voices calling my name. That was the worst part. They didn't need to come down here. They already had everything they wanted, or almost everything. My phone buzzed one last time. Final phase pending. The lights flickered, and somewhere deep inside the bunker, behind a wall I had never opened, something clicked on. The click wasn't loud. That's what scared me. It wasn't mechanical either. It sounded intentional, like something had been waiting patiently for the exact moment I relaxed enough to notice it. The lights stabilized after flickering, but the color felt wrong. Too white, too clean, like a hospital room. I stood there, heart pounding, staring at the wall where the sound had come from. That section of the bunker had always been solid. Concrete, rebar, untouched. I checked it dozens of times when I built the place. There was nothing behind it. I was wrong. The radio crackled again, even though I'd shut it off completely. The voice returned, smoother now, less clinical. Thank you for entering a controlled environment. My hands curled into fists. You're not supposed to be down here, I said quietly, not sure who I was talking to. Maybe myself, maybe them. The voice paused, like it was considering the sentence. Correction, it said. We are not down there. You are. The wall in front of me shifted. Not opened, shifted. The concrete slid inward slightly, revealing a seam I had never seen before. Air rushed through the gap, cold and dry, carrying a smell that reminded me of old electronics and something organic underneath it. Something alive. My phone buzzed again. No text this time, just a timer. 0:59, 0:58. A minute. I backed away, scanning the room for options. There were none. The hatch was sealed. The cameras still looped. The radio wouldn't respond. The bunker I'd trusted for years felt smaller by the second, like it was shrinking around me. The seam widened. Behind it wasn't dirt or rock. It was another room, perfectly smooth, perfectly lit. No tools, no furniture, just a chair bolted to the floor and a glass panel stretching from wall to wall. Behind the glass, something moved. Not walked, adjusted. The shape kept changing, like it hadn't settled on one yet. Faces slid across its surface, some familiar, some almost familiar. I recognized my neighbor, the woman from the bus stop, the guy from the grocery store. Then I saw myself, not as I am, as I could be. The timer hit 0. My phone went dark. The voice spoke again, now coming from everywhere at once. Observation phase complete. The chair slid forward on its own, stopping inches from me. Restraints unfolded slowly, deliberately, like they didn't want to startle me. That's when I finally understood the dreams, the bunker plans, the feeling I'd had my entire life that something was watching, waiting. This wasn't an invasion. It was a retrieval. I laughed, couldn't help it. The sound came out broken and shaky, but it was real and that mattered. "You don't need me tied down," I said. "If you wanted me gone, I'd already be gone." The thing behind the glass stilled. The voice hesitated. "Clarify. You're not studying survival," I said, stepping closer to the glass. "You're studying choice, reaction, adaptation, and I've been choosing my own moves since this started." For the first time, something like uncertainty rippled through the room. I raised my hand and pressed it against the glass. It was warm, too warm. "You learned from us," I said, "but you never learned how we fight." The lights cut out, not flickered, cut. In the darkness, alarms finally screamed. Real ones, the kind I'd built in myself. Emergency purge, power reroute, manual overrides I'd installed and never expected to use. The bunker shook. The voice returned, distorted now. Unexpected behavior detected. I smiled in the dark. "Yeah," I whispered. "You should have observed longer." The explosion wasn't big. It didn't need to be. Just enough to collapse the hidden room. Just enough to blind the cameras. Just enough to turn their perfect controlled environment into chaos. When the lights came back on, the wall was sealed again. Cracked, burned, silent. No voice, no movement. I sank to the floor, breathing hard, waiting for something, anything, to respond. Nothing did. Hours passed, then more. The bunker stayed quiet. My phone stayed dead. The radio stayed off. For the first time since 2:17 a.m., there were no instructions, no alerts, no tests. I don't know if I won. I don't know if I delayed something worse. All I know is this: they learned how we react. But I learned something too. If you never give them the response they're looking for, they don't know what to do next. And somewhere above me, in a world that looks normal again, phones are quiet. For now. Don't know how long I sat there after everything went quiet. Time didn't mean much underground. Without my phone, without alerts buzzing every few minutes, it felt like the world had forgotten me. Or maybe I was the one who'd been removed from whatever system was running things now. Eventually, I stood up. The bunker was damaged but intact. Emergency systems had done what they were supposed to do. Sealed breaches, rerouted power, killed anything that wasn't essential. The hidden wall was still there, blackened and cracked, like something had tried to claw its way back through and failed. Whatever had been on the other side wasn't moving anymore. If it was still there at all. I didn't touch it. I waited. Hours. Maybe a full day. I slept in short bursts, waking up every time I thought I heard my name. But it never came. No whispers. No footsteps. No calm. Synthetic voice telling me what I was supposed to do next. When I finally worked up the courage to check the surface cameras again, they were live. No looping timestamps. No distortion. Just the shed. The trees. Wind moving the grass the way wind is supposed to. Nothing watching. That scared me more than anything else so far. I waited another day before opening the hatch. Slowly, inch by inch, sunlight spilled down into the bunker, blinding after so long in artificial light. The world smelled Normal. Dirt. Leaves. Warm air. No static. No hum under everything. I climbed out. The shed was still standing, though one wall had a deep crack running through it like the ground had shifted beneath it. I stepped outside, half expecting to see someone waiting for me. A copy. A watcher. A thing wearing a face it hadn't earned. There was no one. I walked back toward town on foot. Cars were moving again. People were talking, laughing, complaining about traffic, about internet outages, about that weird alert last night. Most of them shrugged it off. A glitch, a hack, a hoax, something they didn't want to think about too deeply. Some people didn't come back. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. Empty houses, unanswered texts that stayed unanswered, familiar faces missing from places they should have been. We all avoided talking about it, like saying too much might invite something to listen. I checked social media on a borrowed phone later that night. Posts were back. Videos were gone. Every clip I'd seen had vanished. Accounts wiped. Threads scrubbed clean. The only evidence left were screenshots people claimed were fake. One post stood out to me. Buried. Downvoted. Ignored. If it happens again, don't react. Don't answer. Don't organize. They don't understand refusal. The account was deleted. I didn't sleep much after that. Not because of nightmares, but because of the quiet. The kind of quiet that feels temporary. Like a held breath. Like something waiting to see if we'd learned our lesson. I keep the bunker ready now. Not because I think it'll save me again, but because it reminds me that I noticed. That I adapted. That whatever was studying us didn't get everything it wanted. And sometimes, late at night, when my phone lights up for a notification that isn't there, I think about that last alert. Final phase pending. They never said it was canceled, only delayed. So if your phone goes off one night, and the alert feels wrong, and the words don't sound like they were written for you, don't answer. And whatever you do, don't let them see how you react.